Welcome to the third annual Halloween Spectacular by Trapped in the Law. I'm still working on the title, I guess. So, the last 2 years, I have made different videos about different movies. The first video comparing the slasher remake trend of the early 2000s to their original counterparts, as well as last year's video about the Dark Cinematic Universe, or the Dark Universe, whatever you want to call it. But today I decided, because I've been pretty swamped this year with a lot of personal stuff going on that I don't want to talk about yet on the channel, why don't we talk about something that I enjoy listening to, and that is creepypastas. Now, when you hear creepypastas, you probably think stuff like Slenderman and Jeff the Killer and whatnot. And to an extent, you would be correct in that assumption. But I'm not going to be including any big iconic ones in this conversation. Instead, I want to talk about 5 creepypastas I've heard that I genuinely enjoy, that I thought were fantastic. These obviously are going to have spoilers. I don't think I could try to talk about these without having spoilers, but I'm going to keep the details to a minimum. I'm not going to try and directly quote the creepypastas, so you can still listen to them or read them. Let's jump in with the very first one I want to talk about. First one I want to talk about is Accounts from a Lonely Broadcast Station by Wendingus. And this is a pretty long-running one. It just finished its 3rd season, not last year, but I think the year before it, maybe. It's fantastic. It's just incredible. The character work in this story, the action set pieces, the overall drama, the intensity, the story itself is fantastic. And let's dive into that story real quick. So you're following Evelyn McKinnon, who is recently hired on with a empty broadcast station in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. Her job is to keep the radio running. She basically lives at the watchtower the entire time, and it isn't until the end of the first one that we find out the main purpose is to keep this weird, bizarre fog at bay. There's a lot of eldritch monsters, like Frankenstein Wendigo style creatures that are like amalgamations of human and animal. And the fog is trying to take over the town, but there's some sort of thing in the radar or the signal being emitted by the watchtower that's stopping it and holding it back. And she has to stay in this very precarious situation during some key and horrific moments that would probably have me running as far away as I physically can. I have a very strong tolerance for scary shit. A lot of the shit she goes through, if I had to go through it, I would not be able to, that's just not happening. That ain't happening. I highly recommend that you either read or you listen to these. There's fantastic audio readings you can find on YouTube if you just search for them. Like I said, the 3rd season just ended a year or 2 ago, and I am very, very patiently waiting for a 4th season because it is spectacular. It's fantastic. There are so many questions that still need answered. There are so many stories that need solved. There's so much going on with this story that I genuinely want to give the most absolute bare bones so you can go watch it or read it. This is the one series, if you're watching this video looking for something to get into, I would absolutely recommend. From a small town existential horror to a much larger and much more terrifying existential horror, we go to our second entry, The Girl the Universe Forgot by D.D. Howard. This story is incredible. It's not scary in the sense of big monsters terrifying the town, and it's scary in the subtle way and the horrific implications. Anyone who's watching this, I'm sure, has heard of the Mandela Effect, and that's basically what this story is. But if you're unfamiliar, to summarize very briefly, it's basically the memories of one thing not being accurate to the facts of it. For example, the biggest one is obviously who it was named after, Nelson Mandela. A lot of people thought he died in the 1990s or 1980s, whichever one. But he actually didn't die until the early 20-teens, I believe. It's just kind of small stuff like that. And this story offers a terrifying explanation for it, where you follow the perspective of this young man in college whose teacher starts wasting away the final day of the year to talk about this phenomenon. And the character starts to remember this one girl from school when they were back in like kindergarten, I believe. And his best friend, who he's known for years, has went to every school with him, cannot seem to remember this. So they get this whole family, they get this whole high school, this whole school reunion and shit. And everyone, like, there's some people that remember her, there's some people that aren't. And throughout the story, you're just like, it's implied, it's stated that like two universes just kind of brushed against each other, right? And this girl, her family, all of the impact she had or could have had on people was just gone. And that's like, that's existentially terrifying in the way that like remembering that in 4.6 billion years the sun is going to explode and there will be no memory of you, nothing to commemorate your existence or anything like that is terrifying. It's fantastic. And for a lot of it, like, it's not... It plays a little bit, right? Because, like, you can't be sure if maybe they're just misremembering something until, like, the very end, where their teacher from kindergarten who missed the reunion posts a picture that someone drew of the class with 12 boys and 12 girls, despite the fact that there were only 11 girls at the reunion. And it's like, it's honestly like just fantastic. It's like eldritch horror, but in a way like less bleak. I mean, that's still a pretty bleak thing to have happen. Just brush against another universe and all of a sudden everything you've ever done or everything you could have done is just gone. Like, wow, that's actually really fucking terrifying to think about. Wow. Moving from that existential nightmare to a much more realistic one, we have our number 3 entry, 11 Rules for Dipshits Who Bought a Haunted House, by Zacharias Frost? Yes, Zacharias Frost. It is one of those classic, well, I don't know if I would call them classic. A couple of years ago in the creepypasta community, a genre or type of creepypasta became popular where people were given like certain rules to survive certain situations. This is one of those. It basically details from the perspective of a guy, his best friend and his ex-girlfriend, who is now with his best friend, whose name is Nathan, and their family moving into a house that they found. And it slowly becomes revealed that it's haunted. And it's very interesting. There are, all these different ideas or all these different rules and stuff. And it follows a pretty bog standard rules format for this type of creepypasta. But probably the most surprising is the final reveal. I'm going to offer a quick spoiler warning here. This is better experienced if you don't reveal it. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to move away from this video. Okay, the 11th rule is to make sure you've fully exhausted every option before deciding that your house is haunted. It's revealed that he sabotaged the house. He puts Bluetooth speakers all around that would play anything ranging from footsteps, knocking on the walls, high-pitched whistling to agitate the dogs. He had mild hallucinogenics that would leak in through the ventilation shafts and everything like that. And it's not explicitly stated, but I also feel like it's kind of implied that he was sneaking into the house at night and assaulting the children, talking about leaving bite marks and scratches on the kids and how it's never stated in the story, okay? But it's kind of implied. But it's revealed he wound up using this whole thing to isolate his best friend Nathan, or former friend Nathan, from his family to kill him in revenge for stealing his girl and driving him into a bout of suicidal depression. And I think that probably my favorite thing ever is the final lines where he talks about, if you're probably wondering if it's a confession or not. If it was a confession, then anyone hearing it would be listed as an accomplice. And he had he has a software system that's really good at finding IPs. And the final line is, "We wouldn't want your house to suddenly become haunted, now would we?" And I think it's beautiful. I think it's fantastic. The 4th one on our list today is My wife has been peeking around me from... hang on, let me pull it up real quick. My wife has been peeking at me from around corners and behind furniture. It's gone from weird to terrifying. And it's basically that. It is the guy who gets married to love his life, and she just kind of starts being creepy one day, peeking at him from around corners and behind furniture, and he eventually becomes so uncomfortable that he leaves. They go back because she follows him to his brother's house. Like, the whole thing is just bizarre and terrifying, and I highly recommend reading this one too, or listening to this one as well. There's supposed to be a sequel in the works, but it's been about 2 years now. But at the same time, I mean, I waited 2 years for Account from a Lonely Broadcast Station's season 3, so I suppose that's not too unrealistic. But personally, I feel like the ending to this one, it's very ambiguous, because he's in a hotel room, and he posts about how he just got an email or a text message from an unknown number, and it just says "found you," and that's just kind of where the story ends. I feel like that's probably better than any kind of sequel you could have, because it's like very ambiguous whether or not the wife finds him, what the fuck's going on with her. Like, there's a part in the story where he calls her mom for help, and her mom basically is implying that this isn't the first time this has happened and that he needed to get help, and it's kind of ambiguous what help she meant by that. Part of me would love to see a sequel to this, but part of me also realizes that a sequel to this might ruin some of the mystique and the terror factor in it. But I don't know. Go ahead and listen to it for yourself, or read it for yourself. Go ahead and leave a comment down below and tell me what you think. By the way, I know it's kind of late in the video, but all of these will have video links and links to the actual story themselves in the description down below if you want to experience it for yourself. And the 5th one on our list is It Has No Face by Ghost Eye Tree. This is probably, you know what, not probably, this is objectively the funniest fucking creepypasta on this list. The entire story is this guy gets caught in a blizzard. So he pulls off and he finds this empty cabin to stay in. And ignoring blatant obvious warning signs, like an empty cabin with weird creepy paintings all over the place, he chooses to spend the night by pulling one of those like half-cover ski mask things over his face to keep himself warm. And he starts to hear scratching in the wall, or in the closet, and again, ignoring what is a blatantly obvious warning sign, he chooses to stay. And this monster comes out of the closet, it sees him, it approaches the bed, and then it stops and is kind of like freaked out a little bit because he thinks it doesn't have a face, or the monster thinks he doesn't have a face. And then like he gets ready to like come down and start attacking the dude or whatever he was going to do to the guy. And the guy's alarm goes off, and he like fucking puts he grabs the phone, starts jabbing it at the monster, fucking sets the flash mode on it, starts playing loud as hell music on it, scaring the thing back into the closet and shit. And it's like, it's implied and then revealed later that it's actually a way into the basement. And it's like, he peels the fuck out of there, and it's, the rest of it is just like, that is objectively the funniest thing ever. Because it's like, one of the comments I saw in the video when I first found it was like, imagine this guy telling imagine the monster telling the story to all of his monster buddies. Like, it's so fucking hilarious. It also has a pseudo-ambiguous ending where he like winds up getting married to his friend, and she accepts that he wants to sleep with the mask on and everything like that. And it's kind of like, he's talking about like, he doesn't know if it's real or not. But one night while they were asleep, he thought he heard something whispering "no face" from his closet. And I'm like, that would be interesting. I don't know if, obviously it doesn't have, I don't think it has a sequel, because no one's ever covered the sequel that I'm aware of. But it's honestly like, I prefer to think of it as he got away. I don't like to think of it as the monster followed him or has like friends or whatever. Like, I like to think of it as he just got away and now his PTSD is acting up. But it's a really good story. I recommend reading, obviously, all of these on here. I've said that before multiple times, but I recommend reading this one as well, or listening to it as well. And there you guys have it. My recommendations for 5 great creepypastas that I genuinely thought were fantastic. Happy Halloween, everybody. You know, this is the time of year to read and listen to creepypastas. I highly recommend doing so. It's very fun, very cathartic. I've spent my Halloweens usually watching Silent Hill related content. So thank you for taking the time to watch my creepypasta video. And I will see you guys in the next video.